Hey, how's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here. He's Doug Upstone. We are DocSports.com. We are Us Against the Spread, coming off our first week of Us Against the Spread premium videos. And boy, it was a nice weekend overall with the shows on Thursday and Friday, the college football and the NFL shows. I know we both had a real nice money plays weekend. And of course, those money shots that we talk about on the show are the top plays from the particular show. All of our premium plays, of course, 1-star through 8-star, still over at DocSports.com, as always, exclusively for Doug and myself. And you can find all of our premium plays, 1-star through 8-star, located on our homepages at DocSports.com. But those games we talked about, 3-0-1, I'm going to say should have been 4-0 because I know that push for you was Notre Dame. And we're going to talk about that in just a bit. Let's remind everybody what we're doing here. And also tell people who are just jumping on board what we're doing here. Every Tuesday, Doug Upstone and I are going to be talking about a free report for Thursday and Friday college football, generally Thursday NFL, and sometimes Thursday or Friday college football. And that video will be up every Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, let's call it. And it's right here on the Doc's YouTube page. It's free. And then, of course, our shows that we do, our premium shows over at usagainstthespread.docsports.com. You'll be able to find our college football preview late Thursday night, early Friday morning. That'll feature 8 to 10 college football games. And then Fridays, we shoot our NFL video where we talk about every single NFL game on the board Sunday. And of course, Monday Night Football. And we have opinions on all the games we talk about, sides and totals. They might not quite be those premium plays we have over at DocSports.com, but they're right there. As far as just missing the premium card. And again, we tore it up. I know you had a really good NFL show. We talked about like 13 games. I think I gave 11 opinions, went like 10-1. You had a very good run. I think you were, what was the record again, Doug, in the NFL show?
Went 9-4 on that. So happy with that. In college now, I know you did better in college. You can let everybody know. I was 3-4-1. And so the Notre Dame, that made it a little bit worse. But go ahead. Tell them how well you did. I know you killed
it. Was 5-2-1 in college, and I believe it was 10-1 in the NFL on the shows. And we had a good weekend over at DocSports.com with the top plays, the premium plays. We won on Saturday and Sunday and Monday combined and went 4-1-1. And if you go back 2 weeks to Monday, September 11th, after a rough weekend for me, and I was sitting there talking to my wife watching the Jets and Bills, and I had the Jets. And of course, Aaron Rodgers gets injured after his 4th offensive play for the New York Jets. And I'm like, oh, man, it's just been a rough luck weekend. When the Jets came back and won that game, I said to my wife, I'm like, well, hopefully this is the turnaround game. And since then, I've ended up winning 77% of my college and pro football plays combined. So, Doug, going to look to keep it going. And as I mentioned, they can find all of your plays, all of my plays, exclusively on our homepages at DocSports.com. We're going to talk a little Thursday night NFL. We're going to talk some Friday night college football in the Pac-12 on this report, give you a couple of opinions. Before we jump into that, though, Doug, I got to tell you, man, what was I thinking? And I'm going to tell you the game that I just want to do one of these. What was I thinking when it came to a game that I left off my card this past week? How about you, sir?
Oh, yeah, I have one as well. Now, mine was last Thursday. And so I was doing prop bets. And so, look through it. So I was looking at McCaffrey, for a touchdown. I was looking at him for yardage. But then for whatever reason, my attention got drawn to Brock Purdy for passing yards and to go under because he hadn't been really that close to it. So, I'm thinking, hey, this just makes more sense because McCaffrey seems so obvious. And so to use probably the best analogy I come up with, the expression, it's used both positively and negatively, lowest hanging fruit. Okay. Yeah. And so, from the obvious, it's the obvious. No, I can't take that one. That's just too easy. So what do? I go with Purdy. McCaffrey goes easily over the yardage, but then the one, then right after he scores the touchdown, Al Michaels, that's the 12th straight game that McCaffrey has scored a touchdown. What was I thinking?
Well, was it as clean as that, or did you say something besides what was I thinking?
No, that's what I say on this show. So I'm good otherwise. Yeah. So what about you, Scott? What did you have up?
I lost you there, Doug, for a second. I apologize to the folks.
Oh yeah, no. So my question was, what did you have up then? You heard what my bad choices. What
Oh,
happened for you?
well, Monday Night Football, we had two games again, and I had the Bengals. We got a push out of that. They went to their version of the prevent defense on the Rams' final drive and ended up having to settle for a push. But the what was I thinking game was the other Monday night game. I left the Eagles off my card, and I said about it on shows. I think I said about it on our NFL Us Against the Spread show that the Eagles are going up against a team that's overvalued right now. And you talk about Tampa Bay, they got outgained by 127 yards in a cheesy win over Minnesota, where the Vikings turned it over 3 times, and the Buccaneers had a +3 turnover ratio. Then they go up against the horrible Chicago Bears, and what do we see again? Another plus turnover margin. So credit Tampa Bay for that, but it's 20-17 until the late pick 6. They barely got by the Chicago Bears. Oh, by the way, how bad are the Bears? Well, opening lines had a team that lost 70-20 as a road favorite over the Bears this week. So there you go. So, and then I'm looking at Baker, and I'm talking about it on shows late last week and over the weekend. Baker Mayfield going up against teams with a top 10 ranked defense going into Monday night's game. 8-15 was his record, 34 touchdown passes, but 25 interceptions. And he has another clunky game against the Eagles. And I was sitting there going, why did I not play this game? That was goofy. But anyway, it happens. What was I thinking? At least it wasn't a play that I had or you had that we lost that we shouldn't have been on. It was the other way around, which are a little bit easier to stomach. But
Yes.
Let's talk a little Thursday night football. We've got a big battle, a divisional battle between the Lions and the Packers in Green Bay. And boy, I've seen this line jumping anywhere from pick to Detroit 1 to pick to Detroit 1, total around 46, give or take half a point, depending on when you've looked at this game over the past couple of days. And I will say this, Mr. Upstone, that I got to give the Pack some credit because they were down 17-0 through 3 quarters of play against New Orleans, came back and won that game 18-17. And I wanted to explain something real quick before I get your thoughts on the Thursday night game. When we release our premium plays at DocSports.com, it's 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays, where we release our entire football card for that week: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday Night Football. And I tell people all the time, Doug and I have been in this business for a long time. I think Doug just let it out of the bag that our combined experience is like 50 years in the business. Thanks, Doug. As if the white hair and beard wasn't enough. So anyway, we're ahead of the closing line, generally speaking, 80 to 85% of the time. Now, that doesn't mean you win that much,
Right.
but you're ahead of the closing line that much. So my advice is get those plays as soon as you possibly can. And if you're going to be involved, do it as soon as you possibly can, because generally speaking, 80% of the time, those lines are going to move our way and you lose a little bit of value. So I get a win with New Orleans +1.5, but I know if you win until Saturday or Sunday, you might not have got a win with those New Orleans Saints. Might not have got it. You like that grammar? Anyway, Mr. Upstone, what do you like on this Thursday night affair?
Yeah, this game now is even though it's early, it's an important game because with Minnesota and Chicago both 0-3, it looks like it's likely to be these two teams, in this division. Now, Detroit has looked better just across the board, and especially when you start looking at some of the statistics. I mean, they're offensively, they're outgaining the Packers by 99 yards on offense. So that explains the ranking of Detroit 8 and the Packers 22nd. And then defensively, even Detroit still comes out, somewhat ahead, ranked 11th in total defense versus the Packers at 15th. Both teams coming to this one, Scott, they got pretty significant amount of injuries, but I read over some of the Packer websites, and this is conjecture, mind you, but there's plenty of people that believe that Aaron Jones, Alexander, the cornerback, and Christian Watson, the receiver, all of those guys were held out with the thought as they could play on this Thursday. So if that's true, I think that gives the Packers a little bit of advantage if that ends up being true. The other thing that comes into play here, despite what seems to be pretty obvious, Detroit should be in a deserving favorite, is they beat the Packers in the last game of the season last year to knock the Packers out of the playoffs. I can't imagine one player isn't going to be fully motivated to want to turn the tables. And let's also not forget that Detroit, as Jared Goff in particular, back in July said, hey, we have the Packers number now. Okay. They've beaten them, I think, twice. They swept the series twice, I think, since 2008, including last year. So I'm not going to go quite that far from his perspective, but you know what? I'm going to take the Packers at a pick or +1 for this game.
I'll go the total route in this one. And, if you look at what these teams have done, I mean, like last week, you had Detroit's offense, really basically a situation where it was Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta who were doing all the work. And, obviously Jared Goff delivering the rock, delivering the leather to these guys throughout the course of the game. By the way, real happy with Amon-Ra St. Brown going over 100 yards again. He's now on track to receive about 1,560 yards in receiving this season if he's able to play every game. And that would go over my over-under wins future prop on St. Brown by about 560 yards. So real happy with his start because, there was some reports that he's a little bit banged up going into that game. But listen, I think this Detroit defense is not really getting enough credit. You kind of hit on it there. I mean, I know it was Desmond Ridder, but they sacked him 7 times. And I know Kansas City in week 1 didn't have Kelsey. And I know that, obviously you had Kadarius Toney who was dropping a couple of open passes, but they held Mahomes under 230 yards passing in that game. So I do like this defense. I think Green Bay's defense will respond also. I like under 46. I think it's a tad too high, Doug. So you're going with Detroit, and I think the under is the way to go in that football game. Now, we're going to switch to college football, and normally we'll do a Thursday night game, but I thought this game we really should talk about, Doug, and you happen to agree when we spoke about it. I don't know you have here, side or total. Doug and I never talk or let each other know until we do the show what we're on. But Oregon State hosting Utah in a huge Pac-12 matchup. This is a Friday night game. You'll see the Beavers there laying 3.5, total 44.5. This game in Corvallis. We do know that, Cam Rising is listed as questionable again. Seems like it's going to be an ongoing thing, Doug, at least for a while longer, the quarterback for Utah. And 3 of Utah's targets, 3 of their top targets are also listed as questionable. Hey, man, they did a great job on defense against UCLA. That was one of the few losses I had on our 2 shows over the week, and I like UCLA in that game, but they got the job done. Your take on this one?
Yeah, really give Oregon State a lot of credit, down 35-14 to come back and make it a game. And the thing, that we talked about even last week, I mean, it proved to be true. That offensive line is just dominating. I mean, they get it rolling. They ended up, I think it was 260 plus yards of rushing last week. Now, Utah is going to be a completely different story. No question about that. But I like the gumption that this team showed last week in terms of just generally speaking, how they played. Now, the Utah, okay, let's look at their offense. Now, whether Rising plays or not, and if he plays, I mean, he hasn't played in 10 months, Scott. So, right. I mean, is he going to be ready to go? But this offense, 95th in rushing, 100th in scoring, and 120th in passing yards. They haven't even thrown for 200 yards yet, and their average is 151. Do you really think they're going to be, from my standpoint, are they going to really be able to handle Oregon State if they don't have a passing game? Boy, I'm having a hard time with that. Now, I'm probably making a bigger deal about this than I should, but went from 3 to 3.5. I don't know if it was this morning or whenever it was, but from when I saw it previously. So what I'm going to do instead, I think this team is going to be very motivated coming off a loss. They're playing an undefeated team who whacked them last year. So I'm going to take Oregon State, the Beavers, to be eager in the first half and take the -2.5 with them.
I'll tell you, I like those plays. I like that first half play that you got there. Nate Johnson is the guy who's filling in for Cam Rising until Cam Rising is eventually healthy. But you made a great point about the fact that it's been almost a year since Cam Rising has seen live action as far as game action is concerned. And even if he comes back, it might take him a little bit to get back on track, maybe a game or two. But Nate Johnson's the backup. He's been getting the starts. He was only 9 of 17 last week against UCLA, threw for a touchdown pass, stayed away from any picks. But really, thanks to the Utah pick 6 in the opening quarter of play against the Bruins, they win the game 14-7. But, I looked at Utah's offensive numbers, 219 yards total offense against UCLA, 13 first downs. It was the defense that was fantastic. Can they continue winning going up on the road against a high-powered Oregon State offense? And one thing about Oregon State, pretty balanced, 225 yards rushing per week, 235 yards passing per week. This will be the best defense, obviously, they've played up to date and potentially for the entire season when you talk about Oregon State going against this Utah D. The Oregon State defense, not real hot, but I think they're getting the offense, the old just what the doctor ordered offense as an opponent. I think this game stays under that total of 44.5. And I know that's a little scary when you're talking about what the Beavers have done offensively and what they've allowed, but I think Utah's got to run the football, keep Oregon State's offense off the field. And I love that Utah defense. I don't think they wilt in this particular game. They may get beat by the time this is all said and done, but I think it's an under this week. So I like your play quite a bit. Doug going with the first half on Oregon State, and I'm going to play the under 44.5. And Doug, I know it's early. It's Tuesday. Have you taken a look ahead and potentially mapped out your card yet? I'm looking at the card on Sunday night, as I always do, and lines start popping out and during the NFL games for next week's college. And again, it's one of those situations where I had like 4 college games right off the bat. And so we're looking at, again, at least 7 football plays for me in college and pro football this weekend. There will be a couple of big plays in the mix. I got one dog who might land as the 7-star this week for me in college, might even get to 8 if that line doesn't drop. And I'm kind of waiting to see that might be an 8-star play. So, but anyway, folks, check out the homepage for Doug and I over at DocSports.com for our plays on a daily basis, and right here on the Docs YouTube channel for our daily videos. What are you looking at this week, Doug? Have you had a chance to map it out at all yet?
Yeah, well, last week, as I mentioned during the week on their show last Tuesday, or I guess it was last Wednesday, that it hadn't been a great start for me, so I changed things up and kind of went back to something I used to do, which is just literally look at the games and just make decisions, okay, without looking at any statistics or anything else, and just pick games out. So I'm happy to say, had a 5-3 week last week, hit both my best bets with South Carolina and the Seahawks. So that worked out well. So obviously I'm going to do the same thing again, from that standpoint. So I put down 12 games to look at, okay, that pique my interest the most. After we get done doing this show, I'm diving into the numbers tonight to get things going. NFL, I got 4 that I have mapped out as well. Haven't, no thoughts yet for me because you're further along because you say you do it earlier than what I do. No thoughts exactly, what kind of star units or, as of yet, but we'll get there. Okay. So, but yeah, it's an interesting card. It's quite a bit different than last week. Last week had so many marquee matchups. So it's quite a bit different, but there is definitely some good stuff. I'll tell you one thing everybody should be paying attention to: the Sun Belt. There is a number of very good and comparable teams in that conference. Really fun to watch and to follow.
Well, I'll tell you what, since September 11th, that Monday night, we've done 77% college and pro football. We swept the NFL. I guess, I don't know, do you call it a sweep when you have a push? Because I did sweep Sunday in the NFL, and then I pushed on Monday night, like I mentioned earlier, with the Bengals. But no losses, I guess I could say, in the NFL this past week. And college, we had a 2-1-1 card. But again, 77%. And I'll tell you folks what I do, and maybe folks can get into this habit, and it helps me. I don't know if it helps everybody. Sunday afternoons, before the lines even come out, I look down my sheet. I look down the entire schedule, and I usually can find 3, maybe 4 college football games, 1 or 2 NFL games of those early games that have gone final on Sundays, and I write them up. And then I wait for the lines to see if they fit. And so for me, it was a situation again this week where I had 4 college games and 2 NFL games that I've already written up and just had to wait for the lines to come out. And you basically know by power rating where the lines are going to be. So again, it's going to be at least 7 plays, maybe more, a couple of the top plays this weekend. Don't forget to check us out over at Us Against the Spread. .docsports.com. Check it out, because for $19.99 per month, you're going to get a whole bunch of games from us. Almost 100 games per month, 8 to 10 in college football per week, every single Sunday, Monday NFL game, all for $19.99. And that means $5 a week for close to 100 games a month that we're going to talk about. He's Doug Upstone. I'm Scott Spreitzer. We are Us Against the Spread, brought to you by DocSports.com. Let's put them in the win column, everybody. We'll talk to you on Thursday with the premium show over at Us Against the Spread.